Shai, welcome to Tim and Sid. How you doing?
I'm all right, gentlemen. How you doing?
Well, this took a turn. Like last night, I'm thinking, you know what? The schedule's going to come out soon for baseball. We're going to actually look at how many good teams the Jays have to play over a 60-game span, not including Tampa, who are also fantastic. And then it hit me reading your tweet today about the Jays in Dunedin and the several positive tests. The Jays are nomads who have no home. How does a team like that prepare for a season?
Yeah, I mean they're essentially in scramble mode right now. They've got a lot of questions to sort through in a very short amount of time. Players are trying to get to wherever their training camp is going to be, and they don't know where that's going to be. So that's an issue. And then the place where you were going to hold your training camp, well, you just had multiple people get infected with COVID-19 there, and cases are spiking in that specific county of Florida, as well as the entire state. So, that was going to be your backup plan for a home for the regular season. And that's uncertain, and you're not certain whether or not you can get to your actual home, which is Toronto, to play the regular season games. So, yeah, I mean, they're really up against it in multiple ways right now. And look, the most important thing is that we hope that everybody who has contracted the virus has a speedy recovery and, suffers no long-term implications from this. But, in the grander picture, this is a pretty messy and tricky situation for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Listen, all of this is messy and tricky, and I hope that whenever we have these conversations, that goes without saying. And I'm glad that you added it, Shai, but I hope that whenever we have a COVID-19 conversation, the caveat should always be we hope that these guys don't suffer any long-term ramifications from it and they get over it quickly. And sometimes when you're dealing with as much as we've been dealing with in the past, it doesn't exactly sound like that because we're trying to figure out a bunch of different things at the same time, but that should always go without saying. Do you, Shai, know what multiple means? Like, is there, and I don't want to get you in trouble or have you try and walk down a road that would get you in trouble, but do we know what multiple positive tests means? Like how many people?
I don't have a specific number just yet, and it's unclear. But it was related to, end of last week. I think it was Friday that they shut down camp because there was a player who was symptomatic, and that case turned out to, I'm guessing, to be positive. That he's among the players and also staff members who were affected as well. So. The facility has been shut down and going through a deep cleaning, all those things that you would think are automatic in this case. But, I think right now from the Blue Jays perspective, what you're going to have to try to do is, one, you're going to try to follow the very detailed 2020 MLB operations manual. You've got to set that up and get that into place. And they were positioning Dunedin to be that and to follow all the protocols established within that. But, if you're deciding that because the case numbers are really high and, in the Pinellas County area, which is where Dunedin is in Florida, they had a record 353 new cases yesterday. The majority of the positive cases that they've encountered there are in the 15 to 24 and 25 to 34 age groups. So, that's the age groups that players are typically going to populate in. Is that where you want to have your base? And, can you get to somewhere else where, you're not in a community where the spread is as prolific right now as it is in Florida? So, it's really tricky on a number of fronts, and there's no obvious answers for them, which is part of what makes this so difficult.
Shai Davidi here on Tim and Sid. Shai reported within the last hour or an hour and a half, forgive me, that several positive COVID-19 tests have taken place at the Jays facility in Dunedin involving both players and staff. So if Dunedin's a no-go for the foreseeable future, Shai, where do things stand in Toronto? We heard a little bit yesterday from the health minister in Ontario about they haven't really seen health guidelines from the Jays yet. They would welcome them, but they hadn't seen them. Where do we stand on Rogers Center and Mark Shapiro and that conversation?
Well, the indications were that the Major League Baseball or the Blue Jays needs to submit a proposal to the government for them to consider it. And, there is a scenario, like if you just think about it logically, you look at the setup that you would have, you've got a hotel that's attached to the Rogers Center. You could, in theory, have a team fly in. They'd be coming through the private terminal at Pearson because all the teams charter, and go straight from the airport to the hotel. From the hotel, you're going straight to the ballpark. There's relatively minimal contact. You can essentially create a little mini hub for visiting teams arriving to Toronto, and potentially you could house all the Blue Jays players at that hotel as well, if that was a route that ended up making the most sense. So, in theory, the pieces are there for it to work, but does this news change where the Blue Jays are at there? Anyone coming into the country is going to have to be tested and be quarantined. And, if the NHL could come up with this plan, certainly that one could be tweaked to fit the Blue Jays needs. But are we there yet? No. And, can that get done in time for, a late July start to the season? Sure. But we're not there yet.
It's funny that you talk about, and Shai Davidi is joining us here on Sportsnet. He is from Sportsnet. We are of Sportsnet, and we're talking on Sportsnet. Major League Baseball said that it will not formally restrict the activities of players, coaches, and essential staff outside of the team facilities in their operations manual. We saw today that the PGA Tour got bit because they were doing essentially the same thing, while Sid and I have been talking about this the entire time, Shai, and saying we need to learn from other countries. What are other countries doing? And in Germany, a coach couldn't coach his first game in Augsburg because he went out to get toiletries once. Might there be a reframing of the way Major League Baseball needs to operate this season based on what's happened in the last week? Well,
Tim, you neglected to include an important piece of the operations manual, in that it not only does it say, well, we're not going to regulate this, but teams are supposed to come up with their own written codes of conduct and submit that to the officials managing the health monitoring program. Mm-hmm. So that's essentially they're saying, guys, you have to regulate yourselves. You're responsible to one another. And that has to take place, but guys haven't even reported yet, right? It's a July 1st report date. The July 3rd would be the first workout day. So, a lot of this stuff hasn't happened yet. And, if you go through that manual too, the Blue Jays in a sense haven't gotten to the first step of that, which is, a pre-screening for arriving players. And so, that pre-screening process is supposed to catch anybody who comes in positive and keep them from bringing COVID-19 into the team ecosystem. And then once you're cleared, in theory, from that point forward, you should be healthy. Everyone around you should be healthy. The access to people within that tier 1 group, which would be players, coaches, and essential staff, would be restricted. So, if you're essentially in a bubble, if you're in there and you're clear, you're clear. But guys are going to be coming from different spots and have been doing different things and have been encountering different groups. And so, the likelihood is that there'll be other positives for other clubs as this intake process begins. The question becomes, once you've essentially created that bubble and created the zone that's supposed to be clear, can you keep it clear from that point forward?
Shai Davidi here on Tim and Sid. Shai, how many players around the league would you anticipate, or you might have talked to a few, are seeing this play out over the last several days since Friday, and are now, regardless of whether or not a deal was consummated or forced upon the players, however it played out, are now honestly thinking, is there a way I can get out of this? Is there a way I can keep my year's service time because of something in my family that's real, where I don't have to be a part of this. Because what you just laid out in terms of it's down to the teams to figure out what level of bubble they have. I mean, there were teams in baseball who claimed they couldn't control dudes hitting trash cans, stealing signs. Like, how are they going to control what people do on the road? How are they going to control what they do outside of a building? Like, how that it seems to me, from a safety standpoint, to be a system destined to fail, because if one or two fail, the entire thing's a house of cards. And how many players do you think are looking at this going, there's no way this is happening, and reporting probably isn't in my best interest right now?
I mean, I'm certain there's a few, but I was communicating with one player yesterday who I asked, are you going to drive to Florida or would you fly to Florida? I said, yeah, I'll fly. No concerns about health. Wants to play, ready to go. Not worried about getting sick. And I think that you're going to have players into every camp, and I think it would be not necessarily representative of any swath of the population, because you've got a bunch of uber competitive dudes who in general need to carry around an air of invincibility in order for them to do their job. So the numbers won't be maybe reflective of your average slice of society. But I still think you're going to get a diversity of opinions. You'll get some people who are, of the mind that, I'm going to be fine. I'll take care of myself, and whatever happens, happens. And you'll get some people who are like, this is too close. I've got a potential risk, either personally or for someone in my family, and so I'm out on this. And you'll have some people who will be in the middle, and maybe say like, I'm nervous about this, but I need to do this for my career, so I'm going to push this forward. So. I think that what's the real test to a degree will be, once you get through that initial wave of positives that, is somewhat to be expected, given the wide scale amount of locations that people are going to be coming from. Once you get past that, can teams at that point build up a comfort level? And I think, in general, team culture, you guys have to often look each other in the face and understand that, I'm either going to live up to my responsibilities or not. And there's an internal accountability that comes with that. I think that's what the protocol is sort of relying on there, that teams are going to be accountable to one another, and that, they're going to set their own rules. I also think that, the more it comes out about players having contracted these cases, it's going to drive home to all of them that, this isn't abstract. This is real. This is in our game. We got to be smart, or this is going to all blow up in our faces.
Shai, one last one. We've run out of time, but I got to ask you because there's a lot of fans asking. Is Buffalo a possibility for the Jays? Can they do it there?
So as of right now, I don't know, and it's certainly possible that things have changed. But as up to the past few days, the Bisons have been relatively essentially in shutdown mode. They don't have a lot of operations. I don't think there's much maintenance of the field happening. My understanding that the Blue Jays hadn't spent a lot of time doing any sort of the prep work needed to turn Salem Field into a COVID-19 compliant facility. So, can they change that on the fly? For sure. I mean, I think that right now, if you're not examining all your options, you're not doing your job. But a lot of the legwork and essentially groundwork that needed to be laid in advance, none of that is there. So it would be a really quick turnaround if that ends up happening.
Good reporting today, Shai. We all wished it was lighter news, but good reporting today. We appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on today.
No problem. Hopefully under better circumstances next time. It's my refrain of these times.
Yes. And
every time
truer words have never been spoken. Yeah. Never stop saying that, because hopefully one day that will be the case. Thanks, brother.
Take care, fellas.